We've also noted a few other control gaps from the review of the voter registration processes, the underlying systems on which the register of voters is hosted, which will require some rectification as well in readiness for the election.
That is Gerald Kasimu from KPMG audit firm on their report regarding the voter register and indeed voter processes. And in line with that, we had the simulation exercise for voter for electronic transmission of votes today, and there were some interesting findings, Jamila.
They were, Yvonne, because by law, 60 days to elections just today. The IEBC is required to run trials of the election technology, especially the transmission of presidential election results. And this was one of the issues that was raised by the civil society when they spoke about raising doubts about IEBC's readiness to conduct the August elections. It was the Angaza movement, which comprises of 10 civil societies. And they raised a raft of issues. Among them was this particular one. And today, the test that was done was the IEBC chose 2 polling stations from each of the 1,450 wards, giving a total of 2,900 polling stations. 6 of them were using satellite modems to relay the results forms. Why am I saying this? They used satellite modems. It's because out of the over 46,000 polling stations that we have, about 1,100 IEBC was informed would not have 3G network coverage. So out of the ones they tested today, 6 of them were among those 1,100. So they were using satellite modems to relay the results forms. Now, this is where it gets interesting. By 2 hours since the start of the process, and this was a story that was done by Sam Gituku, only 40% of the polling stations had transmitted the forms to the Bomas of Kenya. That is just under 1,200 forms. So, of course, the Commission explained this delay. It was caused by the current internet connectivity. Okay? And it's important to know that for them to transmit the results, they need to have at least either 3G or 4G connectivity. And as I've said, that the IEBC were informed that only 1,100 polling stations would not have 3G network coverage. Reminds me of 2017, Yvonne, and we've talked about this before, when more than 11,000 polling centers had been flagged as lacking the coverage at the time. And then presiding officers were forced to move in search of network. And this is one of the issues that came up during the case, that IEBC was thought to have transmitted the forms from different polling stations other than those gazetted. To cure this, satellite modems. Now, I think what we need to understand from the process today is that IEBC is dealing with issues, in my opinion, on that it cannot control. Why am I saying this? As you've said, over 46,000 polling stations, 1,100 have no 3G network coverage. But even for those with network coverage, IEBC has not tested the quality of service. What if they fail on the day of the election? In 2017, remember when network failed, the presiding officers had to take the Form 34A, take their vehicles, and go to the main tallying center to deliver the results. And this brought problems, as you said, in 2017. IEBC actually wanted this to be legalized. The fact that if the network does not work,
complementary
mechanisms can be used. But they lost that. That issue, iliishia tu hapo. So what happens in 2022, as I've said? Yes, today the chairman said that they'll have what they're calling administrative guidelines, which can cover them in the instant this happens. But remember, results that are announced at the polling station are final. Yeah. So what does that mean? This is an issue that is beyond their control. If the issues they face today, they said they were unable to do 40% of it because after 2 hours because of the internet connectivity at the time, which is today. What would happen on that day when you have 46,000 polling stations, all of them trying to transmit results? Would the system get overwhelmed? And if that happens, what would happen to results transmission?
Yeah, but you know, there's a couple of things to that. So what are those administrative guidelines? We need to know what they are. Remember what a complementary mechanism means in this country, and that is the physical presentation or manual of ballot papers, which is exactly what we moved away from, considering the issue of trust with transmission of our election results in this country. In 2017, they did anticipate this with the 11,000 polling stations that lacked 3G network coverage. Satellite phones were purchased. Where are they? I mean, I know I've had my mobile phone for a couple of years, so satellite phones, which are pretty expensive and also very powerful, and able to transmit even in areas with the poorest of network. For anyone who knows satellite phones, you know just how powerful they are. In addition, I don't think they're entirely helpless. This is the point at which they have discussions with various other stakeholders. So, for instance, have they sat down with the Communications Authority of Kenya, other than the tiff that we saw, the back and forth that they had a few weeks ago, on these are the areas, this is what's happening, and maybe that'll come after this simulation exercise. This is what we need to do. Sit down with the mobile service providers, and they've said they will get the satellite modems. But, you know, I hesitate to think that we should give them options in this case that allows a complementary mechanism, because that, again, is where some mischief could potentially take place. So hopefully there'll be much to learn after this simulation exercise. But, you know, these are issues that were also raised by Raila Odinga, right?
Absolutely. I read out the 9 questions that you posed to the IEBC chairman when he was presenting his nomination papers at the Bomas of Kenya. I interested myself in question number 8 and question number 9. Particularly, there was that particular question he was posing: when does the Commission intend to carry out timely end-to-end testing of election technology? When does the Commission intend to issue public notice specifying the date, time and place of the testing and invite stakeholders to attend the end-to-end testing of election technology? I think that is what happened today, part of that testing. And so moving forward is, what do you do with the results of the test today? If 2,900 polling stations and only 40% were able to deliver results within 2 hours, it tells you something. That on that election day, when you have 40,000 plus polling stations and election officers are sending results almost simultaneously, you're definitely likely to have a crisis. And so the question is, what do you do to mitigate against that crisis? Yeah. Remember also, the internet usage that day is likely to be higher.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you'll have people very interested in what is happening in this election. So definitely you will have, you know, let's say a bigger usage in terms of the internet. So what do you do with that, coupled with these delays that we saw today? But I think it's a good thing that IEBC is testing it, is even involving the stakeholders to come and be present there and see the challenges and raise questions about those particular challenges and how IEBC intends to deal with them. But more fundamentally, it is to avoid the mistakes of 2017, because a cursory look at what is happening, it can tell you that some of the issues that were raised in 2017 are yet to be addressed and to be addressed completely. And so what are the consequences of failure to address those issues effectively? It means if the election results were nullified in 2017, because not necessarily of the results, the outcome, but more so because of the process, then it means that if you have not addressed the issues of that process, and you're going to another election with the same process, so I don't know what to call that, because you cannot do the same thing at the same time, same way, and expect different results.
Yes. Speaking of results, did you want to add something before?
Look, Yvonne, I mean, this country, according to the Communications Authority, has about 96.3% network coverage.
Yeah.
That's 3 and 4G. I think what we need
don't forget there's a rollout of 5G in some places as well.
Yes. I think what needs to happen is the demystification of this transmission of election results. Yeah. You know, they make it sound like they are going to transmit physical elephants, you know, as an attachment. It's not true. There's so much mystery that people want to throw around this transmission of election results, and I think the IEBC should quit that. It's actually possible. You can transmit those results. When you look at that slow process that we had today, so if it took 2 hours to get...
Yeah, we did the calculation just earlier this evening.
Yes, it comes to about, what, 76 hours?
Yes.
To cover 46,000
polling stations.
Polling stations.
That's 3 days.
3 days waiting for election results in a country that is 96% plus covered by mobile technology. And I think the mystifying of this process is the problem. I think it should be and ought to be simpler than what the IABC and other players are telling us.
Yeah, and you can imagine if we have to wait 3 days, ngoja humiza matumbo.
Yeah.
Not only that, it just breeds mistrust. If you remember the last time when we had to wait for results, I remember I was covering that on election night, and the results were going, they were going until they were not. We all remember looking at that board at the Bomas. For a while, nothing changed, and then, you know, we all know what happened thereafter. It went blank, and then, you know, we stayed up all night, and when we woke up, you know, the results, there was a big change, and I guess the rest, as they say.
It should actually be possible to have a true election night in Kenya.
Yeah, yeah.
Where you vote during the day.
And you have results.
You have results before you go to bed. It's possible.
It is.
The rest is mischief, if we can put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And particularly the presidential election results. Well, one would argue that legally IEBC has 7 days to deal with this. Yes, they have 7 days. One would argue that there's no need of hurrying the commission to give us results and then end up making mistakes. That's a valid point. That's why the 7 days are there. But at the same time, for a country that has this kind of internet penetration and coverage, we should be able to get results faster. And especially because I would see a scenario where the presidential results are the first ones to be counted, yeah?
Yes.
So deal with them, then dispense with the rest as we move on.
And as it stands, Francis, there are only 4 presidential candidates.
Yeah, 4.
4 presidential candidates.
There you go.
Polling stations, a maximum of 700 ballot papers to be counted per polling station.
46,000 polling stations in total?
Across 40. Yeah, it should be possible.
It should.
To go to bed knowing who has won
the presidential. And speaking of, you know, the presidential vote, you know, it was an interesting week for... Why are we all so amused around the table? So let's talk about the formal nomination of candidates. By the way, this took place for, was it over 20,000 aspirants who are seeking election across various seats? But of course,
actually, 21,753.
There you go. Thank you, Jamila. And out of those, there were 56, you know, candidates to begin with. And then there were 4. So it was a good day for at least 2 of those candidates who, we can call them candidates now, who, you know, seemed, I mean, they've done this before. Yeah. You know, one perhaps was on, you know, a running mate twice before. Another, this would be his 5th stab at the presidency. So for them, Linus, this was a walk in the park, right? They had all their documents, you know, they did it right.
No, cleared.
Cleared. Day one, there was no go and come back and, you know, where's your certificate? So let's talk about that first. We'll get to all the drama thereafter. I mean, there was protests of all kinds, barricades, there was bonfires and things like that. Well,
mini bonfires.
But it was good for at least 2. Well, let's start with the ones that it worked for.
Yes, and I think that is William Ruto of the UDA party and Raila Odinga of the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Coalition party.
Yeah.
So finally, you can say the 2 horses are in the stable formally. They've been cleared to run. This has shaped itself all along as a race between the 2. And this formality was the second most awaited after that of nominating or naming the running mates. So what this means right now is that Raila Odinga, William Ruto are on the road, and so are 2 other aspirants or now candidates who are doing this for the first time. That is Waiga Maure and...
Although Waiga Maure has run before.
Yep.
Yeah.
Did he end up in the ballot?
For president?
Yes,
for president he did, yes.
We need to cross-check that
for
whether he
Senate
actually ended up in the, the ballot.
Yeah.
Okay, and then there is Professor Wajakoya of the Roots Party, who I want to believe is running for the first time.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And who was in this studio just yesterday?
Yes.
You know, we should state the air is kosher. Don't worry, we're all sober as far as we can tell. But so it was good running for 4 of them. So now we know what the presidential ballot is going to look like. But you know, Francis, take us through the process of vetting them? Because it was quite the process, and there were, you know, specific requirements, and for some it didn't quite go the way they wanted. But what was IEBC looking for with all of these, particularly the presidential candidates?
Take away all the drama that we saw at Bomas of Kenya, the tears, the
more tears,
and Vipindre. Take away all those things. Let's ask ourselves what was happening, because we saw the presidential aspirants queue from one table to another, to another, to another. Eventually, a certain document being taken to the chairman of IEBC to sign, and then eventually declare that so-and-so has succeeded, or say you have inadequate papers that you need to go and come back. There were 12 items in the checklist. Number one was an electronic and printed copies of the supporters' signatures. You see, you are required to have 48,000 supporters or registered voters supporting your bid, endorsing your bid. These are at least 2,000 registered voters in at least half of the counties, 24. So in total, 48. Minimum 48 signatures.
If you can do more, then, you know.
If you could do more, the better. In fact, I dare say quite a number of these successful presidential candidates brought in more signatures, just as a cautionary measure. And number two, certified copies of the academic qualification documents from a university recognized in Kenya.
But before you go there, there was a format. Could you just talk about that again?
Yes, the Excel format.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why there was that Excel format, because some of the presidential aspirants tried to play smart, tried to be a bit crooked. Mischievous. Where you have Yvonne Okwara Matole. And then somebody would also write Matole Yvonne Okwara. Same ID number. But if you do it in an Excel format, it's very easy to pick out those things. I know one presidential aspirant who was obviously disqualified, brought in many bundles, but of the same names, hoping that you will tire and bore the IEBC officers to approve them without necessarily
looking through each one of them.
Of course, I wondered how such aspirants thought they would be such clever to beat the system in a very, I would say, in a very pedestrian manner, if you may like. Number three, certified copies of academic qualification documents. I mean, this is also another challenge, because you know what an academic qualification looks like.
And which specific one is required for the seat?
Which specifically is required. That is a matter that is currently before the dispute resolution team of IABC. And so IABC will make a determination on what is a degree certificate, whether it is transcripts, whether it is a letter from a university saying that Jamila is awaiting graduation or something like that. But it was obvious what was required by IEBC. Then there were certified copies of the national identification documents that were used to register the aspirants as candidates. If you registered as a voter with your national identity card, you are required to bring with you the original identity card and a copy of the same. If you used your passport, then you bring those two documents as well. And then the a passport size photograph on a white background. And then you're also required to bring a certificate of nomination by your political party, duly signed, Then a duly signed political party code of conduct, and as well as names of a proposer and a seconder who must have been registered voters and members of the political party that the presidential aspirant is vying on. Then a nomination fee of 200,000 shillings, you are to bring a banker's check, not cash, not any other check, or not M-Pesa, of course. And statutory declaration evidencing moral and ethical requirements under the Leadership and Integrity Act and Chapter 6 of the Constitution. And then, of course, a campaign schedule. So, and these things are not strange. These documents that the aspirants were being asked to bring were not strange. So none of them went before the IEBC officers and Wafula Chebukati as the returning officer of the presidential election and were ambushed with any requirement. These are requirements they knew well about. So that some decided to be dramatic is something that I cannot be able to explain.
Okay. And we then saw quite a bit of that drama. Before we get to that, you know, out of this entire process, there's about 160 petitions that have been raised, of course, objecting to IEBC's decision to lock out those aspirants, and it's across various seats. And let's listen to IEBC Chair Wafula Chebukati on the next step, because those who are unhappy have a moment to, you know, question the process and challenge it through the dispute tribunals. Let's listen to Chebukati.
Solutions come immediately after registration of candidates. The registration was finalized yesterday countrywide, and we then, so far as we have received 160 disputes which have been filed with the Commission, and the process of hearing disputes will commence on the 10th of this month.
And they begin on the 10th, and there's 10 days to hear those. By those who are unhappy with the results.
10th is tomorrow, actually. Yes.
And then they have 10 days, you know, during which to hear those disputes. If one is unhappy with that process, then now they take it to the High Court and the Court of Appeal and Supreme Court and all the way. So there's also, you know, a path for recourse, Jamila.
Yes. There are 160 that you've mentioned are going to be with the Commission's Dispute Resolution Committee, which is expected to begin 10th, that is tomorrow. And they'll be sitting at the Milimani Law Courts for the next 10 days to listen to all those who had any complaints, which is about 160 of them. The committee is expected to listen, make determinations within 2 weeks before it proceeds now to start printing the ballot papers, because in the next 2 weeks they need to have cleared any issues that are pending so that we have the ballot papers printed. And the chairman of the commission said that yesterday, by 30th of June, they're going to start that process. And among those who filed complaints are some of those who were presidential aspirants, citing different reasons. And we saw the drama play out across our TV screens for 2 weeks, with the aspirants being not being cleared for various reasons, including not having enough of the signatures, the 48,000 signatures from 24 counties, with some not having the university degrees as required or the academic papers as required. With some, as we said, bringing the documents in a format that was not expected, like we said, the Excel format, like Ashuri spoke about. There were premium tiers. We had those who went there causing drama, barricading the main gate at the Bomas of Kenya, saying that they need to be cleared. But remember, the law has to be followed, Yvonne. And we'll talk about this more. If you have a university degree, my classmates would know, for instance, that with Jamila at the University of Nairobi, and we cleared in this year, we won the graduation roll. My teachers would probably remember me, the same with Gashuri, Yvonne, and Linas. If you are not, you are not. You cannot go before the IEBC, not even just the presidential aspirants, even those who are vying for other seats across the country had to go and present their papers to the IEBC officers in those areas. Even those, if you know you had not finished high school, you cannot come with a transcript, or university, come with a transcript and say, I was supposed to graduate, but you haven't. And we need that graduation certificate to be able to clear you. The Commission for University Education has a list of universities across the world from whom the qualifications, the papers are recognized in Kenya. So if your university from Costa Rica is not on that list, there is no way you're going to be cleared. If the university you went to somewhere like in Mexico is not on that list, you're not going to be cleared. And that is a very chap process. And I'm told that the CUE, there were some aspirants who camped there almost the whole day because they wanted the universities that they had purported to have gone to be cleared. And this is something that is supposed to take literally 5 to 10 minutes. Someone is there for 6, 7 hours. There are questions that need to be raised about what they really want there. But all that said and done, there are those who have raised issues. Some could be valid. We're giving the IBC 2 weeks to do that. But there are those who are in court over the list that was written by the EACC, the 241, for whom the cases have started to be are being listened to starting today. And there was a clash, of course, between EACC and IEBC, with EACC wanting all those who are in that list barred because of integrity issues. But actually, IEBC only barred 3. And that brought an issue between EACC and IEBC, because IEBC said that it does not have investigative capacity, but it is not bound to act on what the EACC says.
This is the EACC list of 240?
41,
yes, correct. Yeah.
Yeah, so of course they agreed that impeached person, and I was listening to that case in court today, that impeached persons should not be on the ballot paper. But of course, the principle of innocent until proven guilty applies, in that someone has to have exhausted all avenues for them to be completely barred. But I think that's a case in court. But what we witnessed the past 2 weeks before the IEBC, I think some of it was just Vipindre, as Gashuri likes to say, because if you know you have not ticked all those boxes, why even just come and waste IEBC's time, knowing very well that you've not ticked all the boxes? Yeah,
and you know, besides the QUE for universities, you know, many don't know, but we have the Kenya National Qualifications Authority, whose role it is to validate especially foreign qualifications that were attained outside the country. But let's listen to a little bit of that drama, because like we said, from 56, there were 4. For the 4, it was smooth sailing. We know what it looked like. But it wasn't such smooth sailing for Jimmy Wanjigi from Safina Party. Let's listen to the exchange that took place between him and the chair, Wafula Chebukati.
Harmonize, but you must bring me a physical copy of the degree certificate.
I want to say categorically here that kuna mchujo na kuna watu ambao hawataki kuona wengine wakiwa kwa ballot. And you will not get away with it, Mr. Chairman. You will not get away with it. This is a country of laws. It is a country that we adhere to the Constitution. You will not get away with it.
Summarize your...
And I'm going to... No, don't try and cut me. Don't cut me. No, don't cut me. Do not cut me. Do not cut me. No, you are not going to tell me that you're... Hello?
And what followed thereafter, I want us to just listen to the next one, was calls now for taking this matter further to court. I want us to, just before we come back and talk about that, listen to Willis Otieno, who's Jimmy Wanjigi's lawyer and running mate, talking about how far they're willing to take their complaints.
I'm going to fight this to the end. I promise you a legal battle never seen in this side of the tropics. We will fight all the way, and I will use all my legal acumen. I will go to all the courts. I will quote all the laws. I will produce all documents from IEBC itself, confirming how they have always applied the law in regard to qualifications.
Linus?
I think this is overall a very, very bad show from a group that should be regarded as the emerging next generation of leaders in Kenya. It is a show of impunity, if we can put it that way. I want us to look at the simple optics there, where you have a presidential candidate, however aggrieved, the way you address the chairperson of the IEBC. This is supposed to be the guy running the election. In effect, this is your boss for the day.
Yes.
He is your referee. You need to respect him. If this was a football match, Jimmy Wanjigi would have gotten a red card.
Straight red.
Yeah,
For dissent.
Yeah, but he got a sound cut instead. and someone in the IEBC must have had a good background in sound control, because the sound went off. This is a bad show. This is a bad show. And it comes from players, again, who, again, need to review what it takes to actually get to the top of Kenyan politics. And let me point out something else that we need to appreciate arising from this process. If you look at the final list of the presidential candidates, which is 4. There is William Ruto, the Deputy President. There is Raila Odinga, who is doing this for the 5th time. Waige Maura, he had aspired to run, but will be going to the ballot paper for the 1st time. And also Professor Wajakoya, who is going to the ballot paper for the 1st time. Running for the presidency in this country, this process will tell you, is actually a difficult thing. You need, first of all, to mobilize a critical number of people to help you, first of all, get past what you listed there. Yeah, which is requirement number 1. Yeah. List of supporters. 2,000 from at least 24 of the 47 counties. That requires some level of mobilization and popularity. It means you actually have to go out and engage. When you look at these candidates, when did they really, aspirants, when did they really step forward to run for president? When did Jimmy Wanjigi become candidate for president? It was very much recently. So did the likes of, who else is there? Ruben Kigame has been there, Carriera, and we've seen a number of that. But you come in and somehow want to come in with your own set of rules. That is a bad show. The list is so clear there. Give us 48,000 signatures.
Have it in Excel format. Like, yes. You know, the requirements in the checklist is very clear.
Yes. Give us a degree that's not prepared specifically for this exercise. Let it be a legitimate thing that was got in school when you are doing other things. You see, it's a process. So for me, it was very disappointing to see this show. And in fact, the person I came close to sympathizing with, and we have it here, is that James Kamau. I completely didn't understand him, but he looks like he genuinely wanted to be president. Let's listen to, yeah.
I have passed this, I could have become the next president. I believe that. And I'm serious about it. I was really ready to campaign. But now the chance is gone. I feel bad. I feel wasted. But of course, I don't have anything I can be able to do now. I don't have any other way I can be able to get the remedy of what have just happened.
You see, he went about it, sorry to say, in a more dignified way than most of the presidential aspirants. Because Carriera Mudhiora, who was a sensation in 2017, was also here. And I think this is how it ended, in flames.
This voice, maybe we need another voice.
We can speak
You see, it took a lot longer to burn that voter's card than to collect about 2,000 signatures. I think there is a problem there. And here is my problem with all this that we are witnessing. These aspirants are all much younger than Raila Odinga and also younger than William Ruto. So potentially, this is the pool from which we should be getting our next president. But they are all coming from a point of argument that they'll come and end up in the ballot paper on their own set of rules. Let's listen to Ekuru Aukot here.
the monopoly of these documents?
I think IEBC has no capacity, to be honest, to hold this election. IEBC has said in the past that election is a process. And if election is a process, then you must remain consistent. Personally, I'm going to make a case against each and every of those commissioners, because people cannot make decisions that are injurious to a country, to people, and then hide behind an institution called IEBC.
I don't know, Francis, whether you got details of why Ekuru Auko did not make this list.
Well, same issue, signatures. And by the way, I think it is also important, because I posed a question to one of the commissioners, were you looking at signatures of the registered voters? And the commissioner told me, we were not looking at signatures. We were looking at registered voters supporting your bid. Like the people that you have, whose names that you have brought, 48,000 of them, accompanied by their identity cards, copies of their identity cards.
The ones they used to register.
Yes, to register. Are they registered voters? It's not like they were comparing this signature and another signature. They were confirming, first of all, whether these 48,000 people are registered voters. And for them to sign in support of your presidential bid, it must have been willingly. They must have been registered voters. And to confirm that, they gave you a copy of their national identity card to say, I, Francis Gashuri, has supported the presidential bid of Jamila Mohammed willingly. I have signed that document because they were prescribed forms, but at the same time, here is a confirmation that I am the one. This is a copy of my ID. This is where the failed presidential aspirants were complaining. That previously, there was no requirement for the signatures to be accompanied by copies of the national identity cards or documents that the voters used to register as voters. And there was a reason why the commission went that route, speaking to the same commissioner. And he was telling me, initially, people would go to buildings where you sign when you're getting into a building, get those books, you know, copy them, come and fill them and say, these are the people who have supported me. And it is an easy thing to do. I mean, all you need to do is to go to buildings in Mombasa, in Kisumu, in Nyeri, wherever. Use this mobile money transaction lists in kiosks, and you'll get all the names. So you will end up having Linus Kaikai, who is supporting the presidential bid of Yvonne Okwara, who he does not even know, has not even approached him. So it was trying to, you know, to tidy the process of this support for presidential aspirants. And that is the first point of contention by these presidential aspirants. But I have a counter thought. If you cannot convince 48,000 people to sign in support of your presidential bid, then how are you going to convince 10 million people to vote for you to become president first round? Because if you have a voter register of 22.1 million people, if it is cleaned up and you remove, let's say, 2 million, you end up with 20 million. You must get 10 million people to come and vote for you to be plus one to become president. If you cannot convince 48,000 to sign in support of your bid, how then are you going to convince them to vote for you? And if you argue that it is an expensive process to copy the IDs, then how expensive will it be to go around the country campaigning? It's also a logistical nightmare.
Yeah, just before we carry on, and we're almost wrapping this up, I just want us to listen to one more complaint, and that was from Ruben Kigame, who also, you know, had a bit of a hard time getting approval by the IEBC, and in fact did not get it.
To them twice with the same signatures, and they have refused. They say I am late in submitting the signatures. A big lie. He says that I understand your case, but my hands are tied. I would like to know who is tying Chebukati's hands. Which law is tying Chebukati's hand, if it's a law?
Yeah, there was that. I know you want to talk about that, and then we'll talk about the curious case of Walter Mongari, who was the first to be cleared and then
first to be disqualified.
Uncleared. Oh, okay. Yeah.
No, I think every good big show must start with a prank, and I think that is what happened.
You're joking.
but look here, to the point that was made by Francis about the basic ability to mobilize numbers. Here is what this process is also telling us. There are no shortcuts. There is no uniquely Kenyan way to become president. If we are a democracy, then it's about working with others and building numbers and actually making sure that those numbers can actually be sufficient for you to cross the 50+1 threshold. This is the death of the so-called independent candidates, for example. It's also the end of the road for briefcase political parties, and also a dead end for microwave political ambitions, where you just wake up and you have an election. I have money to run or to brand a few vehicles and
billboards
and pop out of one to address a roadside rally. These days, you don't need to mobilize for road. You just literally use the road, and all you need is a sunroof in your car. But when the separation of wheat and the chaff comes at the IEBC, then the winners are always the people who actually did their bit in trying to mobilize politically in a democratic way, party system or coalition. And that is why this is really a two-horse race either way, because it's William Ruto on one end, who has a coalition called, an alliance called Kenya Kwanza, and Raila Odinga, who has a coalition called Azimio. Both know that this game is about 50+1, not 50+1 of the IEBC commissioners or the list that you've been given, but 50+1 of people who will actually vote in that election. So I think this was a reality check, and also back to the country, that political party democracy is an expensive, difficult process. Yeah. It's actually hard work. Yeah. You have to get together, work with people you disagree with. I mean,
you have to get in there, get your hands dirty, roll up your sleeves and do the work.
Yeah, don't just turn up at the IEBC and demand a cut.
Yeah. Wow, okay. Yes, I see what you did there, okay. But one of the things that you mentioned about, independent candidates. So we don't have an independent candidate on the presidential ballot.
Initially.
And there were 47.
Then 46.
Exactly. And then when you take a look at even those numbers that were disqualified, a good number of them, I think out of the 11, was it 6 or more than that, were independent candidates. And, that's a new thing with the 2010 Constitution. And so it is my hope that maybe in 2027 and in the years to come with an election, that we would see, it would be interesting to see what the country would look like with, a president who wins on an independent ticket.
It's interesting, Yvonne, when you say that, because I'll give an example of maybe Walter Monger of the Umoja Summit Party, talking about being cleared. He was the first one to be cleared. And we were thinking, okay, this is different. And then now...
Straight out the stable.
First guy, and several, I think 2 others had tried before him, like those who had come before the commission, now Kondolewa. So okay, we have one at least. But then now... comes actually the last day, that was on Monday, when Jimmy Wanjigi was not clear, and he said up, you cleared Walter Monger, and he had the same academic papers that I do. And that's when I think the IBC went back and looked through the documents and realized that there were errors. And his certificate was withdrawn, and he's out. Although I was listening to him yesterday saying that he's still going to campaign and he's still going to run. I don't know in which election he'll run. But then, Yvonne, I think the IBC, in my opinion, other than that gaffe, actually did try to sort of help some of these guys. When I say help, in that umekuja na signatures, pengine hazitoshi, you're told go and come back tomorrow.
And they were quite accommodating.
And they were quite accommodating in that respect. Even with the photocopies, they were quite accommodating. Even with the format, they were quite accommodating. Even when they had the pre-nomination conference, and there were these complaints from some of these aspirants saying it's not as easy as you seem to think to get 48,000.
Well, being president is not easy.
It's not as easy. But they're also willing to accommodate and tell them, okay, we're giving you 2 extra days to be able to do that. And those who are able to submit it. So they really did try kusaidia watu kidogo, lakini honestly, Yvonne, kuna mali unafika uwezi saidia watu. I think this is what we saw. I think the 4 that we have are pretty short ballot paper as compared to previous years. I think this is the shortest we've had since 1997 when we had multi-party elections. We've had, I think, 11 in some instance and all that, 16 at one point. So tuko na wanne.
16,
wacha tuanze kazi sasa.
But this is how I look at it finally. If Jimmy Wanjigi had not raised issues about Walter Mongere's documents,
then
he would probably still be on the ballot paper.
That was a bit untidy.
That was untidy.
Yeah.
And once again, random thoughts tell me it must have been collusion by one officer of IEBC. Because, you see, the chairman was at the tail end of it, tail end of the process. So it was sequentially moving from one table to another. So somebody must have ticked that the documents are legit, even when they were not legit, either by error or by plan.
Yeah.
And so I think it is important to ask a few more questions. How many of the candidates who have been cleared by IABC, who are seeking various elective seats, have genuine academic papers? Random thoughts, again, quite a number of them may not have genuine papers.
Things may happen in the next 10 days.
Yeah, we've had issues about people who have bought papers, who have procured papers from one place or another.
Or didn't even submit any papers.
Or didn't submit any papers. So I think it's this 10-day period, I foresee a scenario where very many cases will be filed contesting the validity of documents that have been presented by some of the candidates who have been cleared by IEBC to run for various seats. And this is where I end up with by asking a question. If you are seeking an elective seat, so you just go to class, study, meet the qualifications of that office, and then vie.
Well, Francis, the answer to your question is we are still in transition into the new Constitution of Kenya 2010, which introduced some of these requirements. Before that, anybody with the ability to mobilize 1 or 2, 3 people, as long as you are above the age of 18 for these other seats, and above the age of 35 for president, as long as you are able to actually carry out a campaign, you could run for any office, including the presidency.
But to be fair, okay, you know, transition, it's been 10 years, so even if you wanted to sit for a degree...
You could have done 2 degrees.
You could have done 2 degrees in the 10 years, and just thought I'd drop that in there, you know, just as we close. And then also just, you know, one last one. Francis's random thoughts are never quite as random as he makes them